Hello everyone, welcome to the Accounting and Economics Hub, the home of success. Today we are going to be looking at the double entry system of accounting, which states that for every debit entry, there is a corresponding credit entry. So for each and every transaction that takes place in a business, there is always a debit entry as well as a corresponding credit entry. This table gives us an idea of which items are generally debited and which items are generally credited. So items like your expenses, your assets, and your drawings. These items, they increase on the debit side or they carry a debit balance. These ones, they increase on the debit side or carry a debit balance. Then items like your liabilities, your income, and your capital. These ones, they increase or they carry a credit balance. This information is particularly important when you are preparing your ledger accounts as well as extracting your trial balance. We are going to learn some of these concepts in our future lessons. Let's look into this simple business transaction that took place to understand the principle of double entry. So we are told here that Mr. X, a sole trader, started business by depositing 10,000 into the business bank account. So when you get a transaction or an event that took place in a business, where do you start from? You start by analyzing the transaction to understand which ledger accounts have been affected. So he started business by depositing 10,000. I'm going to underline this part. He started business. So when you start a business, whatever you use to start a business, whether it's in the form of money or assets, we call that capital. That becomes our capital. Okay, so this forms part of our first ledger account, which we are going to call the capital account. By depositing 10,000. Now we need to look at the corresponding entry. He deposited 10,000 into the business bank account. So the next ledger account that we are going to open is our bank account. So these are the two ledger accounts that have been affected by the transaction that took place on the 2nd of January 2025. Then from there, what do we do next? We need to understand which account to debit and which account to credit. Remember, they move in opposite direction. If one account is debited, it means the next corresponding account is credited. Capital, generally speaking, it increases on the credit side. It increases on the credit side and it decreases on the debit side. So the left-hand side of our ledger is called the debit side, and the right-hand side of our ledger is called the credit side. The left-hand side of our bank account is also the debit side, and the right-hand side of our bank account is also the credit side. Then, bank account is an asset account from the table that we just looked at now. So bank account is an asset account. So assets increase on the debit side and decrease on the credit side. Why is it that bank account increases on the debit side? Because all items that are coming from the CRJ, which is the cash receipts journal, are recorded on the debit side. And items that are coming from the CPJ, meaning all payments, cash payments journal, are recorded on the credit side. So in essence, the bank account actually comprises the CRJ, which is the cash receipts journal, on the debit side, and the cash payments journal on the credit side. So now we have identified the two ledger accounts affected. The capital account. Why the capital account? Because he's starting a business. And the bank account, because we are told that the 10,000 was deposited into the bank account. Now, which account are we going to debit and which account are we going to credit? You can start with the simpler one, the one that you understand better, I would rather say maybe the bank account. What are we going to do in the bank account? We are told that he deposited 10,000 into the bank account. So which side should we record the 10,000? Is it the debit side where there's a plus, or a credit side where there's a minus? So he injected or he deposited 10,000. So the 10,000 should be recorded on the debit side. There we go. Meaning that there was 10,000 that was deposited into the bank account. It's a receipt, 10,000. So if I record 10,000 on the debit side in the bank account, it means the corresponding entry or the corresponding account, in this case, the capital account, I have no choice but to credit. That means the corresponding entry has to be recorded on the credit side. So I have my 10,000 on the credit side in the capital account, and I have my 10,000 on the debit side in the bank account. This is what the double entry stipulates. For every debit entry, the 10,000 in the bank account, there is a corresponding credit entry, the 10,000 in the capital account. Let's look at a proper ledger. How would we have done this in the proper ledger? So this is our ledger, format of a ledger. The left-hand side is the debit side. The right-hand side is the credit side. So we are going to open our two ledger accounts, one after the other, the bank account as well as the capital account. Or you can start with the capital account and the bank account. It makes no difference. So I will start with my bank account. I will start with my bank account. So this is my bank account right at the center. I record or write bank account. So the debit and the credit side are separated by the red line. Then what do I do next? We have already identified that we are debiting the bank account because there was a 10,000 which was deposited in the bank account, since the bank account increases on the debit side. So I'm going to write the date first, 2025, January 2. So there was 10,000 which was deposited into the bank account. Then I record my 10,000 here. What is this 10,000 for? It's capital. Okay, that is our bank account as far as the transaction that took place on the 2nd of January is concerned. Then I open the corresponding account. In this case, it's the capital account. Since I've already debited my 10,000 in the bank account, it means that the corresponding entry has to be recorded on the opposite side, which is the credit side. 10,000 on the credit side. Amount, I record my 10,000. Amount, I record my 10,000. When did this transaction take place? It took place on the 2nd of January 2025. January 2. What was this 10,000 for? It's capital that was deposited in the bank account. So the corresponding entry here is bank. So 10,000 was deposited in the bank account for capital. One of the common mistakes that accounting learners make is that they record bank account as their ledger account, and then in their narration, here where I've written January 2 capital, they record again bank. So you cannot have bank and bank here, neither can you have capital and capital. So if this is bank account, you need to look at the corresponding account which has been affected, which is capital. If I've opened up my capital account here, I need to identify the corresponding entry or the corresponding ledger account which has been affected. In this case, it's bank. So it's capital, bank, bank, and capital. You cannot have bank and bank, neither can you have capital and capital. Hope you benefited something today. Looking forward to seeing you next time. Do not forget to like our pages, subscribe, and follow us. See you next time. Bye for now.